Good morning, everyone. I know for a couple weeks I've been mentioning to you that today was going to be something that Chris Yalsey and Joe were going to present about the great day in May. And yesterday at about 8:30 in the morning, I found out that Chris had been sick most of the week and was not going to be able to do that. So we'll have to push that. And so that put me in a little bit of scramble mode, but it's all good. I'm glad you're here. Hopefully by now, those of you that have kind of gotten to know me, you know that I really am a strong believer in building relationships with others. And I think as Christians, that's something that we need to be about. I think it's very biblical. I think we can see that just by looking through Jesus' life and how he was very much about building relationships with people. And I just think that that's really important. And so, especially as I look back on my years growing up in eastern Ohio, and not everything, if I'm honest, and look back at life, it wasn't as dreadful as just me having to eat Spam all the time. So that was dreadful, but there was other good things that happened, and I appreciate that. My parents really were focused on building relationships, and they thought that was very valuable, and so that was something that they surrounded themselves with people who had similar interests, and they had similar values and a similar belief in Jesus Christ. And so I remember that growing up, and that kind of softens that whole scarred thing about the Spam when I put that in perspective. And it wasn't an overnight thing, these relationships that they built. It took some time. But I can remember having cookouts at our house growing up or at some other people's houses. I remember things like getting together and playing ball in the yard, whether adults and children. I remember going to people's house after services on a Sunday night and just have pie. I remember studying together. I remember working on a bus ministry together in Ohio. I remember going to church camps together. And some of that may sound familiar to you. But all of those things, because of the people that we associated with and spent time with, built strong relationships and really forged really, really good, strong relationships with others. And I think as Christians, we need to be about building strong relationships, not only within this body, but with others that we come in contact with. And so I just want to talk a little bit today about something that I think will kind of help solidify that and maybe make it a little more visual, if you will. Again, when you think about Jesus' ministry, one of the things that we can do, while we can't turn water into wine and we can't, make the blind see and things like that, one of the things that he did that we can do is we can build relationships with people. And that part of his ministry we definitely can do if we choose to do that. And so I want us to really focus on how we might be able to do that a little bit better today. And that would be my goal today. Now, some people here may say, well, I don't really need to build relationships in my life that really matter too much. I'm fine kind of being the lone wolf. And that's okay if that's you, but I know many people really count on the benefits of relationships, the encouragement that comes from relationships, the strength that comes from those people who are close to us, both them giving it to us and we sharing with them. And I know I need relationships in my life, strong relationships. And so I think too, the people who come through our doors, or that we come in contact with through the pantry or through the Essentials House or other things that go on, they also are seeking and would like to have relationships that are meaningful, that are deep, that aren't superficial. And I think that, again, would be very much in line with Jesus' ministry. I think, too, that a lot of churches talk about knowing Jesus, but I would rather see North Park not just be a church that talks about knowing Jesus, but that people see Jesus in everything that we do. And that be whether it's in this building or at the pantry or where we work or where we play or where we live. Because it's one thing to say, I know Jesus, but it's another thing to live as if we know Jesus and he's a part of our life. And again, I think that helps to build strong relationships. I think there are things that we do here at North Park that help to do that already. I think life groups can help to do that. I think the spaghetti dinner last night that many came for in support of our youth group helps to build relationships within this group. I think the Romeo group that meets in the morning helps to do that. I think the blanket ministry is another way to build relationships with those people who are involved. There are many things like that that go on, but I also think there are the need to build relationships with those who aren't necessarily in this group. So this morning, as I was thinking about how to kind of illustrate it, I went back in time, like way back, like my childhood way back. And I thought, okay, and I've used this illustration before, I thought, okay, I need to make sure that we can underscore and really visualize and understand the importance of relationships. So, in doing so, I decided that we would learn some lessons from Lincoln Logs. Building a solid structure. Now, some of you are sitting here going, what is a Lincoln Log? If you're my age, you probably know. But there are others of you with that expression on your face like, I know what a log is, I don't know what a Lincoln Log is. So, I wanted to share that with you today, and Lincoln Logs were very much a part of my childhood because, one, we lived in the country and we got 3 TV channels, and we weren't allowed to stay in the house anyway if it was nice out, but in the winter, Lincoln Logs were a great activity for us, and we had quite a collection because it seemed like every year my parents would buy us another set for Christmas, and we could build, my brothers and I could build forts and villages and all kinds of structures out of all these Lincoln Logs that we have. And so that was very important to me. And a few years ago, when we were getting close to Christmas, and we as a family, we would always kind of make a wish list. Well, I put Lincoln Logs on my wish list. And again, I got kind of the look I got from some of you, like from my daughters, what's a Lincoln Log? But I had seen them at Cracker Barrel, so I knew it was possible. So, under the Christmas tree, a few years ago, I got me a can of Lincoln Logs. And I was excited. And when I got those, right after everything else was opened, my 2 daughters and I got on the floor and we built a house out of Lincoln Logs. And if you've never seen a Lincoln Log, I'll at least show you. There's a little picture on the screen of a few of the random pieces, but basically there's all kinds of wooden logs, and I wanted the wood ones. I didn't want those cheap ones they started making there for a while out of plastic. I wanted these. So there's the round logs, there's these little green roofing things, there's all kinds of stuff in there, so they're a little bit different. So I thought, there's a lesson that I can learn myself from Lincoln Logs. So this morning we're going to take a few minutes, and what I would really like you to do and ask you to do is just think of yourself kind of as a Lincoln Log. Okay? If you could. Because I think there's lessons that we can apply about building relationships within the church, but also with others. So, lessons from Lincoln Logs. And there are 10 of those that I want to share with you. The first one is this. All Lincoln Logs don't look the same. So again, if we were to dump that out, and if the picture that was up there, there's different size Lincoln Logs. Just like there are different people. Diversity is good. Jesus wanted all men to be saved. Not just the ones that looked like him or that came from his town. He wanted all. And so not all Lincoln Logs look the same. So again, as we build relationships, diversity is something that we're going to come in contact with. And even in this group here, we have different backgrounds. We've come from different parts of the country, maybe from a different country. We've spent time in other countries. We have maybe different church backgrounds. So we may have some diversity here, but that's good and that's healthy. And it can help to build relationships. And I think in building relationships, one thing we need to understand is that we're not all going to look exactly the same, just like what's in that canister of Lincoln Logs. I think another lesson we can learn is that Lincoln Logs have different functions. They have different things that they do. And again, to the scripture that Joe just read, so do we. So Lincoln Logs have these different things. We have those green roofing pieces that that go on the roof, but they can't make a good foundation for the structure you're going to build. The little pieces wouldn't be good on the roof because, well, they don't cover the roof. So it would rain in your Lincoln log house. So they have different functions, and the only thing that makes the Lincoln logs work is by using them the way they were intended. And again, as Lincoln logs, we have different things that we can do as well. Different ways we can contribute to each other's life in our relationships, to the lives of this church, and also to the lives of others. A third lesson that I think we can learn is that Lincoln logs need a solid foundation. If you were to build, or if I were to build a Lincoln log house, it wouldn't be a good thing to build it on jello. It wouldn't be a good thing to build it on water or on snow or on sand, because that's not a solid foundation. As Lincoln logs, you and I need a solid foundation. We need something that's immovable, something that we can count on to give us support, and we have that in Jesus. And so we all need to look at Jesus as that solid foundation. And not everyone who claims to know Jesus really does know Jesus. That's where we have to study, and we have to learn from the things that he did and the things that he said, so that we can understand fully what a solid foundation looks like. And we want to make sure that we study about the Jesus and know the Jesus as our foundation that wants all men everywhere to be saved. Lincoln logs need a solid foundation. A fourth lesson that I think we could learn is that Lincoln logs are for building. That's their purpose. They're not for baking cakes. They're not for, writing stories. They're for building. And really, if you think about you and I, aren't we for building? Aren't we for building relationships? Aren't we for building the church? Aren't we for building up one another? We have that in common with Lincoln logs. Lincoln logs are for building. And it does take time and effort to build those relationships, but if we do what we're supposed to be doing, we can build, just like Lincoln logs can build. A fifth thing that I think we can learn is that Lincoln logs need a plan for building. They need we need a diagram of some kind. If you're going to build, you at least have to have a vision of what I'm going to build if I'm going to sit on the floor with that canister of Lincoln logs and put them together to come up with something. You have to have some diagram or some idea in mind. Well, we have a plan. We have a plan for building, and it's based on Jesus Christ, and it's found in the Bible. And so we need to rely on that. That's where we need to go. I mean, we could say that, well, Jesus was perfect, so how does he really give me the pattern that I need to follow? I'm not perfect. I agree, none of us are. But you see, again, the thing that Jesus did that was so impactful was that his genuine love and his genuine compassion and his genuine concern for others caused relationships to be built. We studied this morning in Jerry's class, and we've been studying about the book of Acts and how relationships were built in that early part of the first century. And not everybody that the apostles, that Peter or Paul or others tried to connect with were open to that. But many were. And it was because, again, Jesus was the plan for that building. So Lincoln logs are for building. We are for building, and we need a plan, and that plan is Jesus. I think a sixth lesson we can learn is that Lincoln logs are made to fit together. Now, if you've never really seen a Lincoln log, you don't maybe understand, but Lincoln logs are cut out and notched so that they fit together. And again, why not? That's what we are supposed to be about. We're supposed to be fit together, to be interlocked, to be intertwined, to be connected through Jesus. And it's tough to break us apart if we have that connection. That's where the strength comes. You see, individually, that one little Lincoln log doesn't offer a lot of strength. But when we connect with one another, when we build those relationships, when we fit together, our structure becomes much greater. Our individual strength becomes much greater because we can rely on one another because of that fitting together as we did. And you see, I think our strength as a church, as a body of believers who believe in God, will get much better if we connect with one another. If we build relationships that are strong, that are based on Jesus Christ, that really are deep, then I think this church will be strong and it'll be able to withstand anything that may come its way. I think a seventh lesson that we can learn from Lincoln Logs is that Lincoln Logs are all important. Missing pieces make for an incomplete and a weak structure. And that should be all there is to say about that. You see, if you look around, we have missing pieces. So our structure is probably not as strong as it should be. We need to try to make sure that we reach out to those who we know who are missing and see if we can't connect with them and have them back in our lives, back in this church. An eighth lesson is that broken Lincoln Logs hurt the structure. Broken or rotting or decaying wood will weaken the structure. Things like criticism or selfishness or envy or jealousy or discord or stubbornness, pettiness can weaken the material. And that can cause the structure to be weakened. And by the material, in this case, I'm referring to people, to you and I, to those in our lives or those who could be in our lives. So we need to make sure that our wood, that our Lincoln Logs, that you and I are not weakened through those kinds of things that could cause us to be weakened as individuals. A ninth lesson, I think, from Lincoln Logs is that what Lincoln Logs build can change. And they could change without changing the foundation. There are several different structures that I could build with those Lincoln Logs that look different without changing the foundation. And what that does, and the more Lincoln Logs that I add, the more structures I can build. The bigger the structure I can build. And sometimes what we can benefit from by having more Lincoln Logs is we can do more things for Jesus. We can do more things in the community. We can do so much more as a group just because we've maybe added more to our Lincoln Log collection, so to speak. And I also think it may mean that there are more relationships that can be built by looking at ways that we can change what we're doing now. And that maybe God isn't happy with just the structure we have. Maybe He wants us to get a little better structure, a little different structure, a little stronger structure. So Lincoln Logs and what they build can change without changing who the Lincoln Logs are necessarily, and definitely without changing the foundation. And I think the 10th lesson from Lincoln Logs is that Lincoln Logs aren't meant to sit in the can. They do nothing by sitting in the can. Nothing gets built. No relationships get built if, as Lincoln Logs, all we do is sit in the can. There's a passage in Hebrews I want to share with you. It's in chapter 10, and it starts with verse 19. It says, "Therefore, brothers, since we have confidence to enter the most holy place by the blood of Jesus, by a new and living way opened for us through the curtain that is His body, and since we have a great high priest over the house of God, let us draw near to God with a sincere heart, in full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled to cleanse us from a guilty conscience, and having our bodies washed with pure water. Let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess, for He who's hoped is faithful. And let us consider how we can spur one another on toward love and good deeds. Let us not give up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing, but let us encourage one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. Those last couple verses talk about togetherness. They talk about relationships. They talk about what we can do for each other and with each other if we make that a priority. I want us to be about building at North Park. I want us to be about building upon the foundation of Jesus Christ as our Savior. I want us to be about building relationships and bonds and biblical knowledge and spirituality, about building love. We've talked a lot about relationships, about vertical relationships, ours with God, and we've talked about horizontal relationships, ours with one another. And I want us to focus on continuing to build those every day and look for ways to do that. We need to be focused on building, not on tearing down or being content with where we are. And we definitely don't want to be sitting in the can. You see, in 1 Thessalonians, there's a passage that says, "Therefore encourage one another and build each other up." And when you put those Lincoln logs together, and they intertwine and they interlock, they're no longer single pieces, but they're a solid structure. And by us building relationships that put us together, with Jesus as our foundation, we can also have a strong structure as a church. Let's stand together and sing. Sid?